Okay, this next segment is an extension of flex animations. Here I'm going to cover how to do head bobbing on characters. By head bobbing, I mean moving the character's head up and down in accordance with their speech. It's particularly useful for characters who don't have a face. With this technique, you can still indicate which character is talking without the need for lips. It's a form of puppeteering, similar to what somebody animating sock puppets might use. So let's open up Face Poser so you can become a puppet master. Now the natural candidate for this technique would be the combined soldiers you see in the beginning, since they're masked in helmets. However, their models don't include the needed flexes by default. In the video, their animations were done in XSI by another animator, which is beyond the scope of this tutorial. However, we do have one character who uses this technique, the alien convenience store clerk. So let's start setting up the scene for him. Go to Choreography, New. I'm calling this head bobbing. And for our actor name, I'll call him Clerk. Press Enter, and as always, right-click on the name and on New Channel. I'm calling this first one Audio. Then do the same thing again, and I'm going to call this channel Animation. Again, this step isn't necessary, it's just a good way to stay organized. Now let's load up the alien model. Right-click in the blank space at the bottom. Click on Load Model. And the model we're going to want is Vortigaunt. So select that and press Open. You know, Valve calls these guys Vortigaunts, but I'm not sure they're even given a name in Half-Life 1. Okay, let's zoom back a little bit on the model so we can get a better view of him. This character actually does have a face, but come on, it's not much of one. You can't tell if he's frightened, angry, sad, or what. Head bobbing will be like icing on the cake for making him look a little more alive. Alright, now the next thing we want to do is load his line. So right-click in the audio channel, then go to Wave File. And under Filter, type V-. I use this prefix for his line, and there it is. Type in the name for it. Then select the line and press OK. And this line has already been lip-synced, which actually works on the Vortigaunt model too. If you press play, you can see it here.
Hey, somebody's gonna have to pay for this.
So he already has some animation to him, but again, this will make him even more expressive. Plus, it's a tough call whether those really count as lips or not. Okay, once you have your audio file up, then the next step is to create a flex animation. You do this the same as a facial expression by right-clicking in the Animations channel, then click on Flex Animation. For the name, type Head Bob and press Enter. Alright, now go and stretch your flex animation so it covers the entire length of the audio file. Letting it go a little bit over on each end is fine. Now click on the Flex Animation tab, and the main flex channel we're going to be concerned with is the head up and down one. So triple click or whatever on that, and I'll resize my window since I'm recording at a lower resolution here. Now the way head bobbing works is to coordinate the up-down movements of the head with the syllables of your sentence. You can also use the head left or right channel or the tilt one, but those are more dependent on what's being said. So if your character was saying, "No, you're all crazy," then you probably want him shaking his head left and right. For normal conversations, I find the up-down channels work best for expressing characters with no faces. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the others, just that the more channels you're animating, the more work you're creating for yourself. Alright, back to working with the syllables. You can only hear the individual syllables when you scan over them in the choreography window. If you scan in the flex animation window, it will be silent. So our first step is to scan over the sentence until we hear the first syllable. Here you can hear the A in him saying hey. So we want to go and create a plot point during the loudest part of this syllable, which is about right here. So hold down Control and create a point for his head to move up as he says that. Now when we scan over it, you can see his head start to rise as he says that. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You need to experiment with what's a good time scale for the sentence you're working with. You don't want too much or too little detail. Otherwise the head movements will be too twitchy or else too slow. Okay, right here he's ended his first syllable and he's starting his next. So we're going to want to create another plot point closer to the center of the line for that S sound. Then his head will move back down a little bit. The next syllable starts right about here, so I'm putting another plot point for his head to move up again. Now the next syllable is heard here, but I'm going to make this one go down to counteract the upward movements of the last one. This isn't to say you want a total seesaw movement of the head, but it's a good starting point for figuring out your motions. Okay, this syllable is ended, so we're going to create another point closer to the center again. Hey, somebody's good. Okay, what's happening here is that he lowers his tone for the gonna, then raises it again for the has sound. A good rule of thumb is that if a character lowers his tone like this, that's a good cue to lower his head movement. So I'm going to create a plot point for the has section. Now I'm going to lower it for the gonna section. Now let's play this to do a quick check on how we're doing so far.
Hey, somebody's gonna have to pay for this. Hey.
Not bad, though his head seems to come up a little fast for the hey section. We can fix this by lowering the peak of this first point, so the slope isn't so steep. You can either hold down Control or you can simply select plot points to move them up and down. Alright, let's continue with the rest of the sentence.
Hey, somebody's gonna have to...
Again, his tone is lowering for 2, so we'll lower his head movement.
Hey, somebody's gonna have to pay for this. Somebody's gonna have to pay.
Alright, he has a good amount of punch in his delivery for pay, so that's an obvious line to raise his head for. In addition to tone, the energy level a character has in his syllable can be another indicator of whether to move it up or down. Okay, his voice drops again for saying 4, so we'll bring it back to the center. And it rises a little bit for this, so we'll raise it again. And his sentence ends right about here, so we'll create one more point. Now let's see what this whole sentence looks like when it's played back.
Hey, somebody's gonna have to pay for this.
Okay, that looks pretty good. So now when you play this back, it will be obvious he's the one saying this line. And there's no one correct way to do this. I'm just showing you a technique that I find works well. Like facial expressions, try saying the line yourself and be aware of how your own head is bobbing up and down. The motion here is also a little bit exaggerated, but this method is best used on characters who have no other means of expressing themselves when they talk, so it can balance out. You can also use this technique on normal talking people, and the methodology is the same. The only difference is that you should lower how high or low the head movements go so they're not as extreme. The reason being is that regular people don't bob their head up and down quite this much when they talk unless they're on a sugar rush. Alright, go to Choreography, Save. Alright, that takes care of this segment. Now stay tuned for the exciting and final conclusion of Face Poser. Alright, by now you should be getting a pretty decent grasp of how Face Poser works. We've covered how to animate your characters, manipulate those animations, lip sync, facial expressions, and head bobbing. This is the last section of Face Poser, and all I'm going to be covering are just the odds and ends I think are useful or worth knowing. So if this tutorial was a kung fu movie, this would be the part where the student learns some weird stance that's not really part of the basic training. I don't know. Let's just fire up Face Poser again.